real quick, before the video actually starts, we passed 1,000 subscribers! That's all the fanfare we could afford. I can't even begin to thank you guys enough for the amount of support y'all have been sending my way. It really means a lot. This whole YouTube thing has always been a big passion of mine, and the idea of it becoming my job has always been in the back of my head, but I never thought it would be feasible. But at this rate, it is kind of a possibility now, which is insane. I just wanted to say real quick, I just really appreciate all the people who stumbled upon my channel and decided to stick around. And I hope you enjoy the stuff I have in store for you. Anyway, how about we get this video started, huh? So the new Knuckles TV series has recently released, and according to people on Twitter, it is genuinely horrendous. If you haven't heard of the Knuckles show yet, here's a quick little rundown of the whole story leading up to it. Paramount releases trailer for Sonic movie. Everyone poops on terrible design. They release new trailer featuring new Tyson Hess redesign. Movie releases and people think it's decent to okay. 2 years go by and the sequel releases featuring 2 new characters, Tails and Knuckles. People say, hey, this movie was better than the first one, and my favorite part was Knuckles. So Paramount, with dollar signs in their eyes, teases a brand new spin-off series about Knuckles the Echidna. People were stoked when they heard this news, me included. After how much I enjoyed the second film, I actually kind of trusted Paramount to utilize this IP and its characters to create gripping and intriguing stories about them. When I heard the news of a spin-off series entirely focused on Knuckles, I thought it would entail learning more about his past, or even seeing the remains of his homeworld after the Owl Tribe invaded and killed everybody. Maybe even feature some characters heavily attached to Knuckles in the actual games, such as Rouge or Tikal. I even thought they'd strip down the cast a little bit and make it more of a solo romp with Knuckles going on an adventure to restore the Master Emerald or something. And maybe even have Rouge swoop in and steal it, forcing him to chase her and get it back. That's at least what I think of when I think of a Knuckles series. But when the teaser started coming out, we saw these new human villains who aren't from the game franchise in any way. We also saw Tikal's dad and Knuckles' chief, Pachikamek, working at a bowling alley?
Just do it, man.
I'm actually...
Needless to say, people became a little skeptical. Then we actually started getting reviews from people like IGN, and found out that apparently Knuckles is barely even in the show. Then, when the show was finally released this morning, as of the writing of the script, Twitter folks started posting vague hints at the fact that the show was bad. Even Sam Procrastinates, a well-known Sonic tuber, posted a very long tweet about how bad it was. And by the time I finish writing this intro, his video has probably already been released. So, with all this Twitter discourse going on about the show on the day it was released, I got super intrigued and decided to check it out for myself and give my thoughts on it. So give me a few hours. I'll go do that and I'll get back to you on that.
They call me Knuckles the Echidna, and unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. Ha 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 ha!
So I just finished watching the show with my friend M, and where do I begin? I guess I'll just start with the show's nonsensical plot. So the show follows, who would have guessed, Wade Whipple, who was recently kicked off of his bowling team because he couldn't stand up to a 5-year-old girl.
I have begged you 1,000 times, please do not insult me in the middle of my backswing.
Maybe I wouldn't insult you if you weren't such a freaking loser.
Well, maybe I wouldn't be such a freaking loser if you weren't insulting me.
So Wade becomes determined to work out and better himself to become a more confident person before the bowling tournament in Reno, Nevada. Meanwhile, yes, Knuckles is relegated to a meanwhile. Meanwhile, Knuckles has been grounded because he can't get out of his warrior roots and needs to learn how to relax. But hey, forget about that! Here's the ghost of Pachikamek! And he's here to tell Knuckles to train someone in the way of the Echidna warrior, so they can continue their legacy. And Pachikamek chooses Wade as Knuckles' apprentice because plot. So Wade heads off to Reno, and Knuckles tags along so he can train Wade along the way. All the while, these corrupt gun agents are trying to track down Knuckles so they can steal his power and take over the world or something. I don't care. I don't care. Sure sounds like a Knuckles story, huh? Alright, so first of all, this story is just horrendous in concept alone. Making the Knuckles series focused entirely on Wade Whipple, the comic relief character, and his bowling-related conundrum was simply a terrible idea from the start. This is supposed to be a Knuckles television show. The title is literally just his name. He should be the sole focus. This should be Knuckles' time to shine. Give him some extra time to develop his character, go more in depth with his backstory, and maybe feature more of his relatives like Tikal and Locke. Pachikamek is here, yes, but he's relegated to a stupid ghost joke in the first episode.
Now, put down the rubber chicken and give your old chief
And a dream sequence in episode 4 that is painfully unfunny. Why not take the chance to elaborate on the Owl and Echidna War? Or maybe go into Angel Island, which is pretty heavily tied to Knuckles' whole character. The backstory they set up for Knuckles in the second movie was really intriguing, and I would have loved to see more. Like, imagine an adventure where Knuckles, Sonic, and Tails set out to return the Master Emerald to its home on Angel Island, and along the way they run into a member of the long-gone Owl tribe who still thinks the war is happening, so he tries to kill Knuckles or something. I'm just brainstorming here, but even that sounds more entertaining than another road trip adventure featuring a villain duo who are both unthreatening and painfully irritating, dude. Legit, every single sentence that comes out of this dude's mouth made me laugh hysterically from how cringy his dialogue was.
Lil pig, where are you? I know you're here somewhere.
No way, oh my god, this show is ridiculous. The reason I'm harping on this so hard is because I just don't understand how anybody thought this would be a good idea. Spin-off shows focused on comic relief characters rarely ever work, so trying to do one with Wade Whipple, a character so forgettable I forgot he was even in the first movie, it's just not a good idea. And to have the audacity to label this as the Knuckles show, despite him serving a secondary role to Wade's bowling plot, is honestly absurd. It's not that hard to come up with a Knuckles story. Like, I just did it myself a few seconds ago. I don't understand how this got past the conception stage. Not to mention that Wade is just super obnoxious the entire time. I do not care for Wade Whipple. I didn't like him in the movies, and I don't like him now. Him being the comic relief character, he has the flattest, most one-note personality ever. He's a cowardly moron who only ever makes the same type of joke in every scenario. In every scene he's in, you can predict exactly how he'll react, and it gets old very quickly. It gets even worse when they start to add his family into the picture, most notably his sister Wanda. Wanda is probably the most unlikable character I have ever seen in any piece of media ever. The only purpose she serves is to argue and bicker with Wade and amplify his childish stupidity. It can be kind of amusing from just seeing these two grown adults fighting like children, but it always goes on for way too long and just becomes irritating. In episode 3, Wanda and Wade have an argument that, no joke, lasts about 6 minutes straight, and it's never funny. Shut up! It also doesn't help that Adam Pally doesn't do a great job in this role. No hate to the man, he seems like a really nice and funny guy, but he cannot keep a straight face to save his life. I think he does a decent job in the first 2 episodes. He's actually not all that obnoxious then. But from episode 3 onwards, he becomes a childish moron completely out of nowhere. He's a doof in the first 2 episodes, but at least he talks like a normal human being. But after episode 3, his IQ drops to single digits and never reverts back to normal. I genuinely can't think of a single moment after episode 2 where Wade didn't get on my nerves. Anytime he didn't, it was when he was talking to Knuckles. Despite Wade being a mouth-slobbering fool for the majority of the show, Knuckles' characterization surprisingly stays intact.
Man, this place is beautiful, huh?
No.
With him living on Earth for a while since the second movie, he's no longer the fish out of water archetype and now serves as a straight man to Wade's idiocracy. And it works decently well.
What is this sorcery? Wade? Wade?
Sometimes the show will slow down and Knuckles and Wade will just have a heart-to-heart conversation, and it comes off pretty sweet most of the time. It's just kind of disappointing that after episode 3, Knuckles straight up disappears for episodes at a time. The first 2 episodes are actually pretty decent and had me excited for the rest of the series, but it just nosedives after that. And I'm pretty sure it has something to do with how little Knuckles is featured. He'll pop in to make a joke or help Wade and his family out in a fight every now and then, which is awesome when it happens, but I'd argue that it should happen all of the time. He should always be on screen! Knuckles as a character has so much story potential. The guy is hellbent on protecting the Master Emerald at all cost. He has a fraught backstory full of war and death, and according to the show itself, he has somehow defeated Iblis all on his own. This version of Knuckles is probably the most interesting version of him, and to not utilize any of it in his own show I don't understand it. The villains in this series are not threatening whatsoever. The main antagonists of the show are Mason and Willoughby, both of whom I had to look up their names because neither of them were very memorable. They are the most cookie-cutter villain duo you can think of. One is cocky and arrogant, but also really stupid, and the other one's more competent and takes their job super seriously. Neither of them have any remarkable character traits or interesting motivation. They want to steal Knuckles' energy and sell it to this buyer guy so they can use it to go around and kill Knuckles, Sonic, and Tails because Gunn let them roam free, but she thinks they're dangerous, but despite them literally proving otherwise by the end of the first movie, their motivation doesn't make any sense, and I don't think I entirely understand their plan. Like, they say that they need Knuckles' power, which you get from extracting, like, his little quills and draining the power from it, despite the fact that the buyer seems to have more than enough of Knuckles' quills that they could probably just go straight for the kill, thus nullifying this entire adventure. Not to mention, they all got defeated so easily. Okay, so spoilers for the Knuckles show, if you really care. In the final episode, the villains end up kidnapping Wade's family and holding them hostage in Wade's father's hotel room, demanding that they have Knuckles as ransom.
And the first to go will be your precious sister.
Oh, no.
I'm okay with that.
So Knuckles shows up and wipes the floor with them. They then shoot 2 of the portal rings, which causes a wormhole vacuum thing to happen. They are then sucked into the portal rings and they collapse out of existence. The villains literally just defeated themselves. Like, it's not satisfying at all. A few minutes later, the buyer strolls up in a giant robot suit and knocks Knuckles out. So Wade uses his epic bowling skills to fight back until Knuckles gets back up and obtains the Flames of Disaster. So Knuckles and Wade use a giant bowling ball to crush him, ultimately killing him. Wade then earns his bowling trophy from the tournament that I totally cared about. And the show ends with, I kid you not, a mid-air celebratory freeze frame. And it cuts to credit. It just cuts to credits. There's no resolution. There is an after credits scene, but it's just Knuckles and Wade riding a motorcycle down the road, and then Knuckles says, "This is my job!" And then it ends. I think a huge reason this show feels so weird, aside from the whole Wade taking over the show thing, it feels like it's trying to be too much like a cartoon. Like, sure, the movies had wacky villains and extraterrestrial talking animal people, but they all felt really grounded in reality. In the movies, whenever Sonic and Tails went to a public place, they were typically disguised in some way, and whenever people found out that they were animals, they freaked out. But in the Knuckles show, Knuckles just walks around out in public and nobody seems to care. I understand that he stopped Eggman and was accepted in the town of Green Hills, but I don't recall any knowledge of these aliens living with these humans becoming globally known at the end of the second movie. There are moments in the show where humans will start acting exaggerated and goofy, and it just feels so disconnected from the world that the first 2 movies took place in. Episode 4 is the most egregious example of this. First of all, Knuckles isn't present in most of this episode, and a majority of it takes place in a dream sequence that Wade has after getting electrocuted and passing out. And this dream sequence is so nonsensical. I'm just gonna describe it real quick. Just give me a I'm gonna describe this dream sequence, okay? The sequence features Wade, dressed as Knuckles, running through a cardboard recreation of a Sonic level, and fighting what I assume is supposed to be Iblis from Sonic 06, who then starts talking about Facebook Marketplace for some reason.
Then I might hit Facebook Marketplace up. Might be some deals on some freaking cool stuff.
And it's all accompanied by a terrible rock song sung by this guy who's dressed as Longclaw from the first movie. I didn't make any of that up, and it's it's awful.
Father, you can't leave me.
I won't, son. I never.
Apparently, the director of the Sonic movies, Jeff Fowler, only worked on the first episode and nothing else for the series, which explains the jarring tonal shift throughout the series. Episode 1 actually feels like an extension of the films, while the rest of the series feels like it's overly wacky, trying to make sure the children watching don't get too bored. This entire show really just feels like a bad fever dream. It barely has anything to do with Knuckles or even the first 2 films. Instead, it focuses mainly on a comic relief character I don't care about. It relegates elevates the character that should be the focus to what is essentially a supporting role, and in general, it's just not a good show, even looking at it without the Sonic stuff. The comedy is decent at best and terrible at worst. The pacing is all over the place, and the ending is rushed and unsatisfying. The only positive things I have to say about this show is probably the animation and the fight scenes. The animation here is a lot better than the animation in the movie. They started using a lot of squash and stretch, which makes the characters' movements feel more bouncy and alive. And the fight scenes, though scarce, they are really fun when they're happening, and really well animated, and the special effects is pretty good. But that really is all that can be said about the Knuckles show. The whole thing feels like it was made just to cash in on the popularity of the second movie, and the hype of the third movie, which is set to release in December of this year. I just hope to God this isn't a sign of things to come for Sonic 3. At least Jeff Fowler is still directing Sonic 3, so maybe it won't be that bad. You know, as long as we don't get any more lazy cash grab spin-off shows based on the movie. Oh my God!
Here I come, rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather. You can call me Knuckles. Unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my muscles. I'm hard as nails. It ain't hard to tell. I break them down whether they solid or frail. Unlike the rest, I'm independent since my first breath. First test, feel the right, then the worst left.